Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art. It's the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson, coming to you from the 40 West Arts District in Lakewood, Colorado. And joining me from his studio on the Road of Enchantment, my partner, my friend, you know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd, how you doing? It's another week, man.
Another week. It's actually, we've gotten a little reprieve from the rain in my hood, because I've been getting rained on every single day. I think my garden, I'm going to have to get some other pepper plants. My pepper plants are not happy at the moment because they've just been waterlogged the last couple of weeks. They
don't like that, do they? Like kind of an arid temp, don't they?
No, in fact, everything looks a little sad right now. So I'm happy that it's actually kind of warm today and sunny.
Probably half the population of Denver too is a little sad if they have seasonal.
It makes people grumpy.
It does.
I see people complaining on social media about it feels like we live in Seattle. Like, whatever, get over it. We're in a drought anyway.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know, I could think of worse things, but
exactly.
It just shows you how spoiled we are as a state when people start complaining about getting rain and water.
Right. Well, it's a beautiful place. I love it there. It's been beautiful here. So yeah, I'm excited. So.
Are you starting to see the influx of people from other states?
You know, they're starting to come.
Town?
Yep, the tourists are here, and we even had steak tips at the legendary Loud American in Sturgis. So I seen some people with biker vests on, and you know, all the vendors are starting to come out. So they're getting closer and closer to rally time. So that'll be fun as well. So,
well, hey, let's get rolling here.
Let's do it.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on Instagram at Tenant Podcast, our Tenant Podcast Facebook page, and of course, our website, tenantpodcast.com. This week, we're headed south to the lovely town of Trinidad. You've heard us talk a lot about Trinidad in the last month or so, to talk with Allyson Sheumaker, Executive Director of the A.R. Mitchell Museum, which we've also mentioned many times in previous episodes. You can follow the A.R. Mitchell on Instagram at A.R. Mitchell Museum, and you can check out all the museum has to offer via their website, armitchellmuseum.com. Allyson, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
As stated in the intro, you're the Executive Director. How long have you been in that position?
About 5.5 years now.
And how did that come to fruition? Because you've lived in Trinidad for a while, right?
Right. I got to Trinidad in 2011 as the general manager of the Trinidad Chronicle News, the local newspaper that's been here since 1876 when the town was incorporated. The newspaper was going to be sold. The owners called me and told me that they thought they had a prospective buyer. So I immediately thought, well, I'm going to need a new job. And I was on the board at the museum, and we were in the process of figuring out what kind of director we wanted. You know, we were just about to start the search for a new director. And I just kind of threw my hat in the ring and said, well, I'm going to need a job. And how about we hire somebody with a business background to run the museum this go round? And they said, sounds great to me. So that was, I started in February of 2018 or 19, whichever one of those it was. I've slept since then, but it's been about 5 years. So 5.5 years or so.
You're not originally from Trinidad.
No, I'm not. I was raised in Lake Charles, Louisiana. My dad worked in the oil field, and we moved around a little bit, but my husband at the time was Air Force. And so we ended up in Colorado Springs, but I had spent the summer of 1990 before I started college working at the newspaper here in Trinidad, just as a summer job, just doing some data entry. And if you had told that 18-year-old in 1990 that she would one day run that newspaper and be raising her kids in Trinidad, Colorado, I would have thought there's absolutely no way that's going to happen. But that's what happened. And through a divorce and moving to Trinidad and working and volunteering at the museum, I ended up as the director.
That's a really wonderful story.
It's fun because it's a job that I love doing. It was completely out of my comfort zone at the time, but I started out as a volunteer, and sometimes I felt like I still volunteer after hours or during functions or just being on vacation talking about the Mitchell Museum. I love it. So it's never been a job that was hard to get up to go to.
That's awesome. Hey, so what's it like to live in Trinidad? You've been there for a number of years. You obviously must like it, right?
I do. A lot has changed since 2011. When I first moved here, marijuana was not legal yet. And now we have 26 dispensaries, I believe, in a town of about 9,000. We're a border town. So we're either the first town you get to when on I-25 when you cross into New Mexico, or we're the last town that you're leaving the state. So we do have a lot of Texas license plates parked at our dispensaries. It's also changed the face of tourism. Legalizing marijuana in Trinidad brought people off the interstate. A lot of people just stopped to get gas and a burger at, Wendy's or something like that and kept on going. But now it's become a destination. Now, in 2011, when I first got here, downtown was at 30% occupancy, a lot of empty buildings. Now, you're hard pressed to find an empty building downtown. They've all been bought up. There's new and thriving businesses. A lot of people have left Denver and Boulder and Fort Collins and to come here to Trinidad because the cost of living is reasonable compared to most of Colorado. I know we're considered a rural community because of our proximity to the next big town, but we've got, Walmart, Safeway, UPS delivers here, so does FedEx. So when you're 3 hours from Denver or 3 hours from Santa Fe, it's hard for me to think of it as rural because the interstate literally runs right through the middle of town. But we've got great trout fishing in the Purgatory River. We have 2 state parks, Trinidad Lake State Park and Fisher's Peak State Park, which is the newest but second largest state park in Colorado. So the landscape of Trinidad looks the same as it did in 2011, but the secret is out. It's a good place to come and hang out and a good place to be. And you can be close to the mountains, but it be affordable, reasonably priced. I know sometimes in Denver, it's going to take you 2.5 hours to get to Breckenridge just because I-70 can be crazy. Well, we can get there from Trinidad in 3 hours,
Wow.
or Monarch or snow skiing in New Mexico, which is another beautiful, beautiful drive. And it's about 2 hours away for that too. So I think it's centrally located with a beautiful backdrop of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, the Spanish Peaks, and now the gravel bike scene has exploded in Trinidad. We never thought much about having the largest geographical county in Colorado with more dirt roads than paved roads, but now that has become an attraction for Trinidad, that there's more dirt roads than paved roads. So you can ride your bike for miles and never see another person.
So when you say bike, do you mean bicycle or motorcycle? Bicycle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bicycle.
No, when you say you're like midway between Denver and Santa Fe, good God, you can't ask for anything better than that, right?
No, we are smack dab in the middle between the two.
And I spent a night there coming back from Arizona, and it was my mom and I barely got over the Raton Pass, and we ended up sneaking into Trinidad and spending the night there. And but that was like the longest ever spent was like one night, and then we were back on the road. But yeah,
that's normal. Well, 5 years ago, that was completely normal for people to say. Now people are meeting in Trinidad because there's a lot of stuff to do. Like tonight, I've told at least 15 people that came in the door today, hey, there's live music across the street tonight. If y'all are going to be in town, there's Robbie and the Reckless, a local band playing across the street at the Well. We have live music almost every night of the week in Trinidad. We have good food. They're all mom and pops, except what, like right along the interstate, we've got the regular fast food, the Taco Bell and McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King and things like that. But any restaurant in town is all family owned and operated. And we don't have chains. We have restaurants that you can say, well, whose green chili do you like the best? Because everybody serves a good green chili. And it's a hometown. It's not a big city where you're not going to know anybody. When I worked at the newspaper, my kids would say, I'd say, I'm tired tonight. Let's go get a burger. And they'd say no, because people are going to talk to you and they're going to ask questions. They're going to want to talk about the newspaper, because you're always going to see somebody. Rarely do I even go to Safeway. I don't care what time of the day it is, that I'm not going to see a neighbor or see somebody that I know.
Oh my God, you've talked me in. I'm moving to Trinidad. Sounds like a great place to live.
I will say it's not the best place to be single, because when I moved here and I was single, a friend talked me into online dating. Online dating is okay if you live in a big city where you're never going to run into somebody. But when you are standing in line at Safeway right behind the guy that you said, no, I don't want to go out, and they look at you and you look at them and you're like, oh, that was you. You run into in a small town. The dating pool in Trinidad is more like a dried up puddle with cracks in it.
And when you're in a line for something, that's a date. So you've already went on a date with him.
Pretty much. I had to cast a wide net. I did end up meeting somebody. We've been together for 10 years now, but he was all the way in Fort Collins.
Does he still live in Fort Collins?
That's a far reach.
He lives in Trinidad now. He lives in Trinidad now. So, which he said, I will never move to Trinidad. I will never live in that town. I said, never say never.
Well, that just says that's just an indication of who you are.
There you go. There you go.
If you can get a guy to move from Fort Collins to Trinidad, you're pretty special.
I said, I'm not leaving. Now he's here and two of his daughters are here also. So
nice.
Wow. That's spectacular.
So, I don't want to, before we move on, Todd, I just want, just real briefly, we don't have to talk long. So Trinidad's an old town too, right?
It is. It was incorporated in 1876. Two main families, the Baca and the Blooms, kind of founded Trinidad. They came up from New Mexico, and it was a lot of coal mining. A lot of coal mining, but it was also a lot of, I don't want to talk negative about this town, but it does have a very colorful history. Most coal mining towns outlawed prostitution in 1912. Trinidad still had their district up and running up into the 40s. Now, somebody may tell me I'm wrong, but I got a book right here that says it. And the madams, there was a trolley in town, and the madams paid for a trolley stop to be put in the district. The trolley went to the prostitution district, but that's what this town was. Al Capone used to hang out in Trinidad during Prohibition. The Highway 12, which goes from Trinidad to La Veta and then kind of onto, you can hook into Walsenburg and get back on I-25. That's the Highway of Legends. It's the Highway of Legends because of all the stories about what happened up and down Highway 12. That's where a lot of the coal mines were. Just a lot of stories. We had the Ludlow Massacre. That's right outside of Trinidad on I-25. There's a big memorial there now. There's a lot that happened down here. A lot went on down here. We had Bat Masterson was one of our marshals for a while. It was the Wild West, and Mitchell was alive for a lot of it. He was born in 1889 and didn't die till 1977. So if you can imagine all the different things that Arthur Roy Mitchell saw from his childhood to when he came back as an adult, and this was a man that didn't like change, and he saw a lot of change in his lifetime.
Yeah.
That's really interesting in the fact that he lived from the tail end of the 19th century all through the 20th, almost all through the 20th century, pre-computer age. So, I mean, he saw a lot of different things.
Right. He went from horse and buggy to a man on the moon and color TV and muscle cars. You know, he drove around in a Model A. And before he died in 1977. So he saw a lot and when I think about it, my dad played semi-pro basketball in the 50s. How much everything changed, including professional sports, homes, just, the fact that people started having garages and quit talking to their neighbors because you needed a garage to park your car. And when Mitchell was born, it was still trappers and Native American walking up and down Main Street. Main Street in Trinidad was still a dirt street with wooden sidewalks when he was a kid. To see, airline industry taken off and all the things that he saw. Now, he didn't see cell phones and he didn't see computers, but he saw a lot. There's a story, a funny story in this Mitchellisms book that we carry here in the gift shop about he was on his way back from Denver to Trinidad. And it was when the Broadmoor had their snow skiing area. And the lights were on. It was late at night and the lights were on. And he said, "What in the world are they doing over there?" And the person he was riding with said, "Oh, they're making snow." And he said, "I have lived too long if I'm seeing somebody make snow." He's like, "That just let me go now. I've lived too long."
That's awesome.
Like mind blown, right?
Yeah. They're making snow. What do you mean they're making snow? But there's lots of good, fun stories in this little book. It's called Mitchellisms because he was full of them.
You sold me that book when I was down there with my wife and May for First Friday, and I've loved it. It's spectacular.
Laugh out loud. There are just laugh out loud. One of my favorite stories is in chapter 2. Mitch was talking to somebody from the State Historical Society. Mitchell founded the Trinidad History Museum down the street. It was those two founding families that I mentioned, the Baca and the Blooms. Their two homes are now part of the Trinidad History Museum, which is part of History Colorado. And Mitchell founded that museum because one of the houses, the Baca house, was put up for sale. He came out of the post office and saw a for sale sign in the yard and said, "No, that's not right." There were plans for it to be turned into a gas station or something like that. And he said, this is an adobe home on the Santa Fe Trail, the founding family of Trinidad, and it's just for sale. So he kind of squatted and moved in till he could raise enough money to buy it and turn it into a museum. And now it's gotten to be much more extensive than it was when he first did that. But History Colorado hired Mitchell to then be the curator, which he was until 2 years before he died. He worked until he was 86, 87 years old. But he was meeting with a member of the State Historical Society, and there was an old man walking up the steps of the post office, which is across the street from the History Museum. And Mitchell said, "You see that old bugger? When my folks moved to Trinidad, I started school here. He was considered the cock of the walk. And as a new kid from the country, it was 5 miles outside of Trinidad. Now it's just considered Trinidad. It's a little town called Jansen. But back then, it was way out in the country." He said, a new kid from the country, it was considered customary that I should establish my place in the order. I didn't have any problem with this, as I was just cocky enough to think I could probably handle him. Well, we got right to it, and quicker than I could know what was going on, he had mopped me up in the dust. I gathered myself up, dusted myself off, nursed my injured pride a few minutes, and then told him I didn't think he could do it again. Well, we went at it again, and the results were just the same and just as decisive. I molded over the rest of the day and most of the night, nursing my damaged ego and a few bruises, and came to the conclusion that I just hadn't performed up to my ability. So the next day, I approached him again and informed him that I still wasn't convinced that I couldn't handle him. He said, "You don't want to have to go through this again. Let's just let it be." But I insisted, so we had a third go-around, a repeat performance, and a third slashing. But you see that poor old bugger now? He's just about blind. And the day that happens, that's when I'm going to take him. So he got beat up by a little kid, and this poor, I don't know how old he was at the time, was barely making it up the steps at the post office, and Mitchell was still thinking, I think I can take him. I might lick him today. That's his childhood. You know, he had an 8th grade education. He didn't go to art school until he was in his 30s after World War One. He found out that he moved to Seattle in the early 20s. In his early 20s, he just said, I've got to get out of this town or I'm going to rot. And he went to kind of see the world. He worked in publishing, had jobs, took some correspondence courses in art, but didn't really go to art school. He joined the military during World War One and was a drill sergeant. He was really mad that they didn't put him in the the cavalry that rides horses in the military.
Yeah.
He was really pissed because he was a really good horseman, but they told him, we don't want cowboys in the cavalry. Y'all don't listen. Y'all don't do what you're told. We want people that we can train, and that's not a cowboy. So he was a drill sergeant. After World War One, he went back to Seattle, and he called it his lost decade. It was 10 years that he was there. He didn't like the weather, wasn't real crazy about the people. It just was a time in his life that he didn't like. Then he found out Harvey Dunn was teaching an illustration class at the Grand Central Art School in Grand Central Station in New York. And that got him thinking about going to art school. And then he found out that a fellow artist, Harold von Schmidt, was going to be taking the class. He was a cowboy from California. Von Schmidt was. Dunn was a cowboy from South Dakota. So he sold everything, got on the train, and went to New York City and wrote a letter to his sister of Grand Central Station. He said, this is the biggest hay barn I've ever seen in my life. Did I do the right thing? And he did, because Dunn became one of his closest friends. Same with von Schmidt. The collection here in the museum, we have, I don't know the exact numbers, but we've got at least 25 or 30 Harvey Dunns and 7 or 8 von Schmidts that are just spectacular. Mitchell did not like to sell his art, but he would trade with other artists. He did sell pieces when he had to or really needed to, but he had jobs like teaching art at the college, Trinidad State College. It was Trinidad State Junior College, or working for the state at the History Museum. He had other means of revenue that he didn't have to sell a piece of art to eat. So we have this huge collection of Mitchell's. We think we probably have 90% of what's left of his collection here in the museum. But part of that's because he hoarded them and didn't like to sell them. But we have a large collection of friends of Mitchell's because he would trade with them. And when they were all living in New York and then the school shut down and they all moved to Laonia, New Jersey, they would come to Colorado for the summer to beat the heat of New York and hang out at his sister Tott's ranch and just plein air paint, hang out, have soirees. We know all this because Mitchell kept just about every letter ever written to him. We don't have the other side of the story. We don't have many letters that Mitchell wrote, but we have hundreds of letters that were written to him, which tells us a story of the kind of cool life they all led back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, hanging out in New York, painting and living their best lives.
Yeah, that's cool. My grandma used to have a Harvey Dunn painting in her living room that called "The Prairie Is My Garden," with the woman and the little girl and the little boy picking flowers. And so
we have one similar to that called "School's Out," and it's a woman and her daughter and little boy with the schoolhouse in the background. And it's like, school's out for the summer and they're running away from the school, which was another kind of Dunn painted several of those, a little bit different variations, but he painted a lot of them. But the letters are fantastic. And thankfully, because Mitchell kept all those letters, I believe it's the South Dakota State Museum in Pierre, has a very large collection of Dunn's, but they didn't know about the relationship between Dunn and Mitchell, because Dunn didn't keep anything. He threw everything away. And it was just by chance that one of their curators was on a road trip with his parents and came into the museum and saw the few Dunns that we had exhibited and asked me about him. And I took him down in the basement and showed him all the information that we had on Dunn, and the museum sent him back to scan everything. And I believe they've published them, but they learned a lot about their, hometown hero, because of all of what Mitchell held on to and kept.
That's amazing. I love that story. No,
It was fun when they came in, and I said, come downstairs, see what else we have. Come downstairs. So that's where all the good stuff is. I mean, there's great stuff hanging in the museum, but there's some really good stuff in the basement.
And I bet you they were beside themselves when they got to see all that.
They were, because they had no idea. They just had no idea that connection was even there, or what Dunn meant to Mitchell. We have letters that Dunn wrote Mitchell's sister. We've got tons of photographs. Mitchell took, I don't know, he was never without his little notebook in his back pocket, but I don't know how often he was without his camera, because we have thousands of photos that he took. A lot of them reference photos for some of his illustrations, but a lot of them are just him and his friends. And we had a lot of Dunn. They were under the impression that Dunn did not like plein air painting, which is painting outside, that Dunn hated. He didn't like it at all. And I said, well, here's a photo of him doing it. So I know he did it. And here's about 15 plein air paintings that he did. But they were just blown away, because all they knew was he didn't like doing it. Well, he may not have liked it, but he did it because Mitchell loved it. And when you came to see Mitchell in Colorado, that's what you did. We've got pictures of Mitchell with his Model A, and the rumble seat is just full of easels and paintbrushes and plein air boxes. And he started calling himself a Model A cowboy when he got a little older. He wasn't riding a horse anymore, but he was, or not as often, but he was still just out on the plains in his car, riding around, painting whatever he saw.
That's amazing. Yeah. I just love that.
He was quite the character. I think when you came to see Mitchell, you just said, all right, Mitch, tell me what you want to do. Let's go.
That's the sense that I get from, talking with you previous, experiencing the collection, because I got to go down the basement, and good Lord. I mean, I can't believe how many, not only the paintings, but like you were saying, I mean, you got hats of his, holsters and guns.
We probably have 40 hats that belong to Mitchell. He just didn't throw anything away. That they're crunchy and old and sweaty and nasty. And he obviously bought another one, but he didn't throw the old one away. We've still got them. In fact, last year when I was putting up the Christmas decorations, I grabbed 3 of his old hats and put them as tree toppers on the top of the Christmas trees that we have in the museum every year. Because I just thought, well, I've got them. Why not? Why not?
Oh, that's awesome.
It's such a spectacular place. Like you mentioned before, was such a crazy character. Even from the get-go, like the stories of him and his youth, it sounds like he was just a precocious little kid. And from what I can tell, he was not a big man, right? He was a...
No, he wasn't. And I only know that because I found a suitcase with his clothes in it, and I couldn't fit into it, and I'm not giant, but he was smallish. I would say maybe 5'8". I mean, he was not big in stature, but he was big in personality and talent for sure. There's a story that his sister would tell about if he ran out of paper when he was younger, or in his books, in his school books, all the margins were full of doodles and drawings. But if he ran out of paper, he'd get chalk and draw all on all of the wooden sidewalks up and down Main Street and Commercial Street in Trinidad. And the museum is on Main Street in what was Jameson's department store. The department store opened in 1886, but built this location and moved in here in 1906. So we're in this giant 46,000 square foot old department store where our display cases are all display cases from the old department store. But I walk out the front doors and, I'm standing on a concrete sidewalk, but I just imagine it being a wooden sidewalk in Mitchell as a kid, just very precocious and being kind of cut loose and drawing all over the sidewalks. And I believe he was 8 years old when they moved into town. His dad had a rock quarry right outside of Trinidad. And then they moved into town and his dad became the superintendent of utilities. So I just imagine his dad was working downtown. They couldn't have lived too far from downtown. Nothing's too far from downtown. And I can just picture this kid on his hands and knees drawing on the sidewalks. That we still have sidewalks. They're just not wooden anymore. And every now and then, a few years ago, we had a sidewalk chalk competition. And it just takes me back and I visualize what it must have been like when he was a kid in 1900, and seeing a trapper walk down the street with his wagon and mule. Because we have pictures of that he painted on the wall, and everybody in his illustrations are people that he knew. He didn't just dream up these things. These were things that he saw and that he knew, which I think set him apart and maybe helped him accomplish that title of King of Pulp Western magazines, because it was easy for him to paint those scenes because it was his life. He wasn't making it up. It wasn't a stretch for him. That was Mr. Parsons that owned a ranch down the street. Those were two of his guys sitting on the fence. It was what he knew. And I think he counted himself very lucky to be able to make a living painting what he knew. Now, what he did do is the guys in a lot of his illustrations have on a bright red shirt or a bright green shirt. He would say, I had to take some artistic license with that because he only had 5 seconds to catch somebody's attention walking past a newsstand for them to buy that magazine and not a different one. So the more magazines that his covers sold, the more jobs he got doing illustrations. So they were very bright, very colorful, the shirts and the backgrounds and things like that. A lot of people come into the museum now and see an illustration on the wall and say, well, it's pretty plain in the background. There's not much back there. And then I just get to explain that that's where all the editorial would have gone on the cover of the magazine, the title of the magazine, the title of the stories that were in it, that kind of thing. So that's why a lot of them just have a plain background, a plain white background or yellow or blue, because they had to make room for all of the editorial that went on the cover along with the art.
There's a great story in that book you were talking about, Mitchellisms, about when he was a little kid, about 5, I think it was, and almost shooting his dad's eye out with a pellet gun.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, there's just so many stories. That one's not ringing a bell, but that doesn't mean I haven't. I've read this book probably 15 times, and now I use it more for reference than anything. But you're right. He was just that precocious kid. I think that story is in the second chapter about his boyhood, but that one's not ringing a bell for me right now.
It was something like his dad was coming towards the house and he had loaded up his pellet gun. I guess it shot rocks, and he almost shot his dad's eye out. It took out a piece of his eye, and they thought he was going to be blind, I guess. And
I'm not surprised.
And it didn't sound like, he really got in trouble for it either. Like his parents just kind of rolled with it.
I'm just not surprised.
The other story that cracked me up is that I guess his parents died within about a year of each other.
Yeah.
And it sounded like him and his 2 sisters were pretty young, and they had these parties all the time in the apartment that they had in town.
Yes.
And at some point,
the city council got involved and said somebody's got to take these kids in hand because they're a little wild. And then they went to live at their aunt's house, which was still, here in town. But they got themselves an apartment after their parents. Now they were probably late teens, early 20s when that was happening. But yeah, they went a little wild. But you have to think about it, though. When Mitchell was 16, 17 years old, maybe 18, he was head of circulation and advertising at the Chronicle News. So, I mean, this is a kid with a full-time job supporting his sisters. So I'm sure he wasn't wanting anybody to tell him what to do. They were pretty independent. But yeah, they got in a little bit of trouble, and city council intervened.
Oh, that's funny.
There's a poem that Mitchell wrote. It's also in that Mitchellism book. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Main Street in Trinidad is one of the two branches of the actual literal Santa Fe Trail that we have in Trinidad. So this was a highway for settlers coming right through the middle of town. But there's a little poem that he wrote, and it says, "I love to sit of a summer's eve by the street in this old town and watch the ghost of pioneers go riding up and down. When the last red rays of sunset have faded in the sky, I sit alone in the twilight hush and watch the ghost go by." And that is so true. The first time I read that, I went straight outside, sat on the bench, and just imagined what it was like, then what he saw, what it's like now, and what it's going to be another 50 years from now. We've seen so many changes in Trinidad from coal mining days to prohibition days to sex change capital of the world days to now outdoor rec and gravel bicycle races that Lifetime Fitness puts on. We have our third annual one this year that brings a couple thousand people to town. And I often wonder, what would he think about it now, or what would he say about it? There's always issues with city council. This city council member did this, or this person said this at city council. What irreverent thing would he have said? Because he said a lot of them. He was involved politically. We still have downstairs in the basement, there's a handful of little political, like dime-sized lapel pins. We have Wilkie, Taft, Roosevelt. He was alive when those people were running for office. And the changes that have happened in this town don't take away from, it's still the Santa Fe Trail. It's still where pioneers walked. We still have out east of here around Branson and that area of Colorado, there's still wagon ruts in the dirt. There's still tracks of where those pioneers went or traveled. And I'll sit out there and think about that, and think about how Mitchell would hate it now. He didn't like cars because you didn't stop and smell the roses. He didn't like when people rode by with loud radios playing because it disturbed his contemplation, But I still feel like it's kind of simpler times here in Trinidad. If there's traffic, it's because Amtrak is stopped for 3 minutes and things have gotten a little backed up. But I can walk to work probably quicker than I can drive to work. I live less than a mile away. And that's one of the things that I find endearing about this town, and that I really like about this town, is that we've got so much of the local flavor is still here. We have a lot of the architecture from way back when. Like, this building is 1906. That's not unusual for Trinidad at all. Mitchell shopped in this store. He probably got half of his hats, his Stetsons, here in the Jameson department store. He knew the Jameson family, and now the museum is in the old Jameson department store. Ben Franklin, where he ate lunch every day, That building is still there right across the street. The bank, we've got a picture downstairs of a mob from 1905 in front of the First National Bank. That bank is still there. It was a mob that was going to the jail. It was a lynch mob. A deputy sheriff shot somebody in the post office, and this mob was going after that deputy sheriff. But we've got a picture of it downstairs. That bank still looks exactly the same. There's still brass bars on the teller cages in our First National Bank right down the street on the corner. So I can go outside and think about Mitchell sitting right on that same bench in front of the Jameson's department store or at the History Museum, which is a block and a half down the street, and jotting that little poem down. I'm not creative enough to jot that little poem down, but I can relate to what he writes there, because I'm looking at the same buildings he was looking at when he wrote that. The speech that is right after that poem, it's called Paso por aquí. It's a long speech. I won't read it, but it is a speech that Mitchell gave to the Kiwanis in 1957, and it's about the history of this area. The first people that saw this area, that laid eyes on it, what the settlers must have seen. It was the last train stop was here in Trinidad for a long time before they, added more tracks. But how many head of cattle were grazing, waiting for that train to stop, then to hook up the wagons, to unload the train and deliver all those goods to where they needed to go. How busy this area was before there was ever a house here, and how hardy this land was, with the Purgatory River running right through it, and the mountains just being to the west of here. I was going to say the left of here, because I'm a left and right girl, not a north. If you give me directions and you say turn west at Walmart, you're gonna have to tell me turn left or right. But I do have my bearings in this building, that's the east wall, that's the west wall, that's the south wall. But you can still relate to that. You can still sit outside and close your eyes and think about what Main Street was like when it was the Santa Fe Trail. And you can drive 5 miles outside of Trinidad heading east, and it looks exactly the same as it did, maybe without the power lines, but you can really imagine what those settlers were seeing when they were exhausted and going about their travels. And Mitchell was witness to a lot of that.
He's an amazing man, and it's an amazing story that this kid that grows up in this small town, essentially, in the middle of nowhere, became this incredible artist, did all these things, significant things, and he was pretty worldly. I mean, he spent time on both coasts, a number of years on the East Coast in New York and then New Jersey.
So he lived in New York and New Jersey from, let me see, 1924, 23, 24 till 1944. He was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer in 1944 and told he was going to die, that he had very little time left. And he came back to Trinidad to hang out with his sister. He had 2 sisters, Harriet and Ethel, when he called them Hat and Tot. Harriet had died by then, and Tot was a widow, and he came back here to hang out with her until he died, and he lived another 34 years.
Really?
That's crazy. It's crazy that he was diagnosed with terminal. I read that in that book.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, good Lord.
And it was not a misdiagnosis. He went to the Mayo Clinic often for treatment. He says that the Mayo brothers stood him up out of the coffin. So that family, I don't know if they still have them, but they had quite a few Mitchell paintings. He gave them several paintings, the Mayo brothers, the actual Mayo brothers that the Mayo Clinic was named after. He was a patient of theirs. And he said they stood him up out of the coffin. And he credits them and their treatments for his longevity. But I don't think he was waiting to die. I think he came back here to die, but I don't think he ever sat around waiting to die. That's the time when he did all of his fine art pieces that we have here in the museum, his landscapes, his adobes. He loved the Southwest, loved Taos and Santa Fe, loved the Native American culture. Mitchell, we have a few paintings of Native Americans, a lot of sketches, but he would say, I don't paint Indians, because he never wanted to objectify or use Native Americans for his own financial gain. He would learn from them. He collected. We have a lot of Native American artifacts, textiles, pottery, rugs, some moccasins, all kind of things that I think he traded with Native Americans. We have a lot of photographs of him with specific Native Americans that he wrote on the back of the photograph who they were. And he and his sister would take the buggy down to Santa Fe and hang out in Taos and hang out in the Pueblos and learn. But he didn't ever put Native Americans on covers of magazines or try to sell paintings with Native Americans in it. We have a really good one called The Prayer. There's one behind me here that we've reprinted this year, but it's a pretty big piece, but on the back of it, Mitchell wrote in his handwriting, it says The Prayer, and then it says study for a mural at Trinidad State Junior College. So that was supposed to be a mural. So that's not something that would have been sold, that he would have profited from. That would have been a representation of what looks like the landscape around here, and maybe what it would have looked like when Native Americans lived here in this area. But he was not only was he an artist and a poet, he was also a historian. Not just the local history, but history in general was very important to him. The history of Colorado, the history of Trinidad. He did I think it was the bicentennial, it was a medallion, the artwork for it for Colorado, the Rush for the Rockies is what it was. And he was happy with winning that honor and happy with the artwork, but he said it didn't quite go like he thought because they printed it on everything. He said they printed that logo on everything but toilet paper. So I think that kind of put him off a little bit, but he was happy with the image. But he was a true Colorado boy. He would bring his friends here. He would teach them about the landscape, the local history. You know, when you're bringing people from California and South Dakota and showing off Colorado to them, this area really meant a lot to him. And when he was informed that he was dying, that's what he was doing, was going back home to Colorado. Never mind New Jersey, I'm heading back home, and stayed here until he died in 1977. The last 2 years, he did go live with his sister in Denver because it was easier for him to get treatment out of Denver and not Trinidad. So by that time, his sister was living in an apartment in Denver, and he did go live with her his last couple of years. He's buried in Trinidad though, but his last 2 years were lived out in Denver with his sister.
And pretty much from the get-go, he was being recognized for his drawing abilities, his artistic abilities, even as a little kid. Yeah. Yes.
He said that when he was younger, there wasn't anybody saying, oh, you should be an artist. He would be told he could draw and that he was really talented, but nobody encouraged that as a career. That wasn't something that you looked to have a career in, let's say, 1905. Nobody was saying, you should do this for a living. That wasn't even considered. But that's one of the reasons that he became an art teacher, was because he wanted to be that for up and coming artists, or, maybe see somebody that had a little bit of talent that he could foster and help grow to become a big talent and to tell them that you can have a career in it. I mean, he was in his 30s and 40s and 50s before that was a career for him, actually making money off of doing the illustrations. He got to do artwork when he worked in publishing in a different way, though. He was more selling the ads than creating them, I think, at that point in time. But he said there's a thing that I always like that he wrote, and it says, if I merely break a trail for others who will surpass me, I will be satisfied. And maybe the footprints of the one who showed them the way not be rubbed out entirely. I've always liked that because he never, ever wanted fame. He never sought it. He didn't care if you liked his artwork at all, because he wasn't going to sell it to you anyway. But he just didn't care what other people thought about him. He was doing what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it, which is a little bit of I don't want to say burden in my job, but I have the responsibility of a whole museum about one specific man that nobody really knows about anymore. And he was such a fantastic person. I mean, I think there needs to be a television series about him. I think Taylor Sheridan needs to come in here and see Mitchell and write some really cool series about him. But that's just because of me. But he did so many important things, and I think he was important in so many lives that we'll never know. We'll never know his full impact because he didn't talk about it. He didn't care if anybody else knew about it. He didn't market himself. Like if Van Gogh's sister hadn't pushed his artwork out there after he died, we wouldn't know who Van Gogh was, which doesn't make him any less significant if we never knew about him. He was still as talented as he is, as we all think he is now. And I look at Mitchell like that. When people talk about classic Western art or classic Western illustrators, they think of Wyeth and Russell and Remington. Mitchell needs to be right in there with them. He was just as good, just as great, super prolific. I mean, we have thousands of sketches here in the museum, literally thousands of sketches. And when I bring people down to the basement, or artists or just regular old people like me that go down there and say, oh my gosh, he was so prolific. Well, he never married. He didn't have children. So he had the time to do whatever he wanted to do. And what he wanted to do was draw or write about whatever he saw or was doing. And lucky for us that we do have this legacy. It's just getting the word out about him, which I truly appreciate y'all inviting me to be on this podcast, because now maybe more people get to learn about Mitchell. And even if you don't come into the museum, which this museum is hard to describe, I don't think you can accurately describe it. You have to walk into it to get the full effect of what we have going on here. The building itself is as much a part of the collection as the artwork is. But Mitchell just didn't do it for the fame or the money. He did it because he was compelled to, and I don't think he could have done anything else. He ran the History Museum. He taught art. He sold advertising, was in charge of circulation. He worked on 2 different cattle drives when he was younger. It's not that he couldn't do anything else, but he just had to draw. He had to paint. He had to express his the art that was coming out of every pore of this man. But
so did he write a lot? Because you read a poem of his. Did he write a lot, or did he write
a lot? We have, I don't even know the number. We've got at least 50 or 60 of these little notebooks that he used to carry around in him with him, kind of like a 3x5 little flip notebook. And there's little sayings all over them, little drawings, little sketches, little poems, little tidbits of information about what he saw. He was very intellectual, even though he wasn't highly educated. He read a lot and he wrote about what he saw. There's information like on the back of photos that he took. He doodled on everything, literally everything. I found an envelope with a letter in it from a lady in California. It was 1953, I think, 1953, 54. And on the back of this envelope, it said, I painted it, I framed it, and I shipped it for $95. She got a steal, but I needed the cash. So, of course, I opened the envelope and read the letter. And it's a thank you letter from this lady that he did this painting for. And she said, she said something about, I bugged you for years. I mean, it took years for her to get him to paint this, small, it was small, paint this small painting for her. But I guess at the time he just needed the cash and did it. That's how we know he would sell a piece occasionally, because he left us that letter with his doodle on the back of it that said what he did. But the letters, I think, tell us so much about Mitchell, just from how, one, the number of letters that we have, that people wrote him that many letters. You're not going to write a letter to somebody that you don't really care about.
Right.
Hundreds of letters. They were all prolific letter writers. But one of my favorite ones, it's just a little short note from a lady named Joan Reese. And I think this sums him up in so good. And it's 2 lines. It says, Dear Mitch, what 2-legged heifer in her right mind would try to lasso such a cantankerous, chauvinistic, opinionated, ornery, lovable old curmudgeon? Love, Joan Reese. P.S. We hope to see you more when you move to Denver. We're only a few blocks from your sister. He didn't move to Denver till he was in his he was late 80s when he moved to Denver. And this is the kind of letter he's getting when he's probably 85, 86 years old. Can't wait to see you. You pain in the butt. But I just love that she must have known him well to be able to say that to him and for him to keep it. There's another letter from him to his sister about a woman that he had a long-term relationship with. And he said, the greatest thing I ever did for her was not marrying her. I mean, he knew his faults. He knew the last thing he should be was married, but he did have several significant long-term relationships in his day. One was an opera singer in New York that he dated for about 10 years. So I can only imagine the life that he led when he was, in New York and New Jersey. And he was famous then, even though he didn't care about it. He did over 160 pulp Western magazine covers between the late 20s, 30s, and up to 1944. With Norman Rockwell rolls off the tongue because of the Saturday Evening Post. Well, Mitchell was just as famous as Norman Rockwell was back in that day. People just don't know much about him now.
And to me, that's crazy. And I had no appreciation. I just want to say this right now. Our good friend, Cody Kuehl, has been talking you up. We had him on last fall. He was just over the moon. He's still over the moon. And now I refer to him as the mayor.
Yeah.
I told him when I saw him a couple weeks back for his opening here in Denver. But, when I got down there and got to experience it firsthand, you really do have to go down there and check it out to have an appreciation for what is going on and for the amazing paintings, sketches, everything that this man did. I mean, he was so, like you said, prolific. I would have loved to meet him. I'd give my left arm to meet this guy because he just, obviously he was a bit of a cantankerous.
I want him to tell me a story.
Absolutely.
I want to hear him tell a story. When she said cantankerous, chauvinistic, he was very chauvinistic. He wasn't, like the sweet, kind, lovable old grandfather type. That was not him at all. He was kind of rambunctious. He was if he didn't like what was going on at City Hall, he wrote a letter to the editor. He if he didn't like a building that was being put up, he talked about it. We have this the Most Holy Trinity Catholic Church here in Trinidad. It was dedicated in 1886, I believe, on Church Street. But they owned some land. Right now, it sits right across the street from Safeway. But there's this big Quonset hut on the property, and it's not an attractive looking building at all. I can drive by it and go, that's kind of an ugly building, and not think much about it. Well, in this Mitchellism book, Mitch made a statement about that gym. The Sebastiani gym is what it is. And he said, that is the ugliest building I've ever seen. It stands out like a horse turd in a pan of milk. I want to hear him say that. I want to be sitting next to him telling these stories about, I went to council, and because he did. He wasn't shy. He didn't hide away in a little studio painting. He was very involved in a lot of things. He knew a lot of people. He knew a lot of politicians in Colorado. There's a letter that we have. There's a copy of it in that book from the governor. Yes.
I was going to talk about that next. So I'm glad you brought it up.
It's just a big fluffy letter about thank you so much for being awesome and saving those two homes and creating the Trinidad History Museum. You're such a wonderful Coloradoan, basically. And in Mitchell's very distinct handwriting on the bottom of that letter, like I said, he doodled on everything. He writes horseshit with an exclamation point. Like, I didn't do it for you, Mr. Governor. I didn't. And later, that same governor was on the board here of the museum after Mitchell passed away. So even though he thought it was total crap that he got this letter, one, he still kept it. And two, that governor thought enough of him to actually be on the board here of the museum later on. So I think he made a difference in a lot of people's lives without trying, without that being his mission. I just think he was a pillar and maybe didn't realize it. Maybe didn't know. I don't think he suffered. I don't think he was insecure. I don't think it was that. I just think he didn't pay much attention to it. He didn't seek it. He didn't seek attention, but I think he got it anyway.
And there is a story in here, and I think it's right before the letter that's published. I think it's the same governor, Governor McNichols, where he talks about how he put on his best clothes, and he was supposedly supposed to be visited by McNichols at the museum, and he waited 4 or 5 hours, and the governor never showed, and he was pretty disappointed in that.
Yeah, he was. He was very disappointed because, well, one, he didn't want his time wasted. His time was important, and he thought what he was doing was important. And to just sit and wait, he called them goddamn politicians, GAWDAM politicians. The governor, he waited for 5 hours, and the governor never showed. I think that's also one of the reasons why he wrote horseshit on that letter, was because, so I waited for you and all you said was the stinking letter, that kind of thing. So Mitch continued to sit there stoic and unmoving, waiting for the governor to show, and he never did. Eventually, Mitchell had to give up and retreat, stalking off, glowering, some say in tears, streaming down and muttering about goddamn politicians.
So it really does show that he did have feelings. And he did feel, disappointment or those disappointments that we all experience. And he did process it in a way that most people process it, but he didn't show that side of himself very often, it sounded like.
No, I don't think so. I think he had a very gruff exterior. I think he let his guard down with his good friends because they were his good, close friends. And I think he had quite a few that he called good friends. But I think he was known as this grumpy, grouchy curmudgeon of a guy. But I think he wouldn't have saved the Baca house from being torn down if he didn't care. He wouldn't have brought his friends to Colorado if he didn't care about his community and want it to be seen by other people. He writes lovely letters to his sister. That there's a painting called Gray Creek that was commissioned by the owner of the Denver Post in 1963. And I can't remember the owner's name right now. But the owner used it as a Christmas card. He sent it out to all of his friends. He did it every year with a different Colorado artist. And we have his sister Tot's copy of that painting that was reproduced. We have her lithograph of that. And he inscribed on the bottom of it, to Tot, the best gal I've ever known. You know, he could be very kind. He could be very loving, but his outward facade to the public, to people that didn't really know him that well, was just a grouchy old crotchety curmudgeon. But I think it's hard to be an artist and to see beauty in so much and not feel deeply, or to be able to write the poetry that he did and not have that sensitive side. And we've got, they weren't hanging when you were here, but we have this exhibit up right now of figure drawings that Mitchell did in 1932 in an art class in New York in 1932. And the women, they are very tenderly drawn. The men are more technical. But the women, you can see the expressions in their face. Some are nudes, one of them looks like a fashion drawing. It's just stunning. But he had to have that tender side. You know, we see all the illustrations in the museum a lot where it's, you know, a rough cowboy on a bucking bronco and all that kind of stuff. But then you see his nudes, and the women are very soft and very feminine. And it just shows another side of him. But I don't think you can just be a total pain in the ass and be able to do that, to see and feel that softer side and project that onto the page or the canvas. We see so many sides of him here in the museum through his different mediums of art, but also through some of the letters that he's written and the poetry that he's written. So I think there were just so many sides of him that very few people got to see all those sides of him.
Yeah, I get the sense that he was an incredibly complex man.
Yes.
And when I looked at some of those paintings that he did of women, I immediately thought to myself, this is a man that loves women, that has an appreciation for women. He might have been chauvinistic, but again, take in consideration the time that he lived in too, and the way that men were. That's not giving him a pass per se, but
no, but it is a reason. It's not an excuse, but it's a reason, you know. But his best friend was his sister. All of his friends loved Tot as much as Mitchell did. We have letters written to Tot. We have so many letters written to Mitch that says, give Tot our love, tell Tot hello for us, tell Tot we can't wait to see her, you know. And there's quite a few paintings that his friends did of Tot's house, his friend's family laying on the floor in Tot's house. Harvey Dunn did 2 beautiful portraits of Tot. So she was a very, very, very special person in his life. And for his best friend to be a female and his sister, I don't think she would have allowed him to be that chauvinistic around her, because I've got an older brother, and there's only so much he can get away with me. And I think it was probably the same way with Mitchell and his sister. But I will say about his nudes and mainly the figure drawings, because they're a little bit more, you see more of it than his nude paintings. You know, there's other things in the pictures, but the figure drawings, it's just a white piece of paper and charcoal in the drawing. It cracks me up that, I don't know if maybe the models were younger and that's why, but the butts and the thighs are big and lumpy and jiggly and, you know, just womanly natural woman, all the boobs are perky and straight. I'm like, was he a boob man? I don't know. Maybe. But that it cracks me up about those that from the waist down, everything looks totally like a normal woman would be. But from the waist up, everybody's perky. Nobody's lopsided. Nobody's droopy. None of that. So maybe Mitch was a boob man. I don't know.
Tenant wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's N-U-E. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine, and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code. Scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
I'm Allyson Sheumaker, and you're listening to the Tenant Podcast.
So did he paint contemporary stuff, or was all his stuff Westerns other than these nudes in college?
Well, we have a lot of landscapes and a lot of adobes in different light, in different places, different sizes, styles. A lot of the landscapes are what you see around here, around Trinidad, up Highway 12 or out east. But there's not anything that looks contemporary. You know, there's not a sketch of a muscle car in 1974.
Right.
There's not any of that.
So, you know, because he lived in New Jersey from 1924 to 1944. So that's 20 years.
He lived in New York City for a few years, and then they closed down the school. They hadn't closed down the school yet, but Harvey Dunn moved to Laonia, New Jersey, and Mitchell and a bunch of their contemporaries moved to New Jersey too. I can't think right now of the exact date. He left New York and moved to Laonia, which is just right outside of New York City.
Yeah.
It's not a big trek. My daughter and I went to a Taylor Swift concert at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, right outside of New York. And when we were leaving the next day to drive back to Boston, I can see New York City to my left and the exit for Laonia on my right. So it wasn't far. And I was like, Mitchell lives there. Look. So,
but he wasn't painting like buildings or,
no.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Even when he was in New Jersey or New York, he was still painting Western style.
There's a few sketches and paintings of houses that you can look at and say, yeah, that's not here. That's not Trinidad. But it wasn't like a brownstone in Brooklyn. It was, a house with trees and a snowy path leading up to it. He did a lot of Christmas cards. Every year he would make a Christmas card and send them out to all of his friends and write something special on it. And there are a few that you can look at and go, oh, this was when he was in New Jersey. This does not look like Colorado, But some Christmas cards are, a horse-drawn sleigh with a Christmas tree in the back, or but no, there's not anything that really veered from his style. Now there is one piece in the basement. It's a sketch, and it looks like it's an illustration. There's a blank space on top for like the title, but it's a woman on a horse, and it's very stylized. It's not his normal MO at all. Even his signature at the bottom, it says ARM, and it's a little different than what he would put on other stuff. That's the only thing that I've seen that looks really out of character for all the other stuff that we have. All of what we have usually fits into a few categories. It's either a landscape, an adobe, a mountain man, or a cowboy. He does have several cowboys that aren't illustrations. That aren't like super commercial with the brightly colored shirt. And then the adobes and the sketches, they could be of anything. We have a fun sketch on the back of an envelope of Bat Masterson, not the Bat Masterson that we see on posters, not that handsome handlebar, mustache, the suspenders, the slick back hair, but Masterson later in life, standing on the train platform in Trinidad with a big old pot belly and a hat on and a jovial smile on his face. He would, I guess he didn't have his camera with him that day, so he had to sketch real quick what he saw standing on the train platform in Trinidad. It's not dated. I wish it was, but I guess we could probably go back and find some photos of Bat Masterson throughout his life and find one that looks similar, to that one. But nothing really contemporary at all, or that veered from what he liked to do.
Interesting.
Now, I'm not an artist, so I may be using the wrong words for some of this stuff. I'm the business side of it, but I will say I've learned a lot about Mitchell and his method and his medium and how he did things. And through Cody, I've learned Cody Kuehl is great. If I have a question, I never feel like he never makes me feel like I'm asking him a dumb question. And I know sometimes he probably wants to roll his eyes and say, did she really just ask me that? But he has really helped me learn a lot more about the artistic side of things, because sometimes I get stuck in the business side of things. And Cody's good at both of them, which is unusual for an artist. And I know I'm not going to make any artists mad by saying that, because they know it. They know that it's usually one or the other. It's business or art, but rarely do you get both of those in an artist. And Cody is a great example of that.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about Mitchell and his history. And, if you go down there, definitely pick up this book, Mitchellisms, in the gift shop down there. Allyson, I'm sure will direct you to it. How did this museum come to be? How did it come to fruition?
So Mitchell never married and didn't have children. And his sister, Tot, married, but she also didn't have children. So he left everything to Tot when he died. So he died in 1977. By 1979, the A.R. Mitchell or Arthur Roy Mitchell Memorial was set up as a nonprofit, and the museum was opened in 1981. There were several key friends of Mitchell's that helped get the museum started. Richard and Willard Loudon, they were brothers. Richard Loudon is the one that wrote the Mitchellism book. Willard Loudon was his brother and an artist who was a student of Mitchell's at Trinidad State. Paul Milosevic, who was also a student of Mitchell's in the 50s at Trinidad State, he's still alive and still painting. He lives in Santa Fe. Ruth Henritze, who was the curator that took over at the History Museum after Mitchell left, they were all instrumental in getting the museum started. Also the Terrabino brothers, two brothers, Joe and John, that owned what's called the Famous Building. It's still down here in Trinidad. It was also a previous department store. The museum was located in there the first 10 years. Tot left an endowment of about $125,000 that was released to the museum after it had been open for 5 years and shown that it could be sustainable. In 1988, 89, I believe, the museum purchased this building that we're in now for about $125,000. A lot of what's in it, the furnishings, like I said, the display cabinets all came from the old department store, but they were able to secure a grant. I believe it was a DOLA grant. So the city took over ownership of this building in order for them to get that grant. Then once the time period had ended, the ownership reverted back to the museum. So the museum has been in our current location. We opened in here in 1991. So the museum has been open continuously since 1981, but changed locations in 1991. And this is the permanent home of the Mitchell collection, the A.R. Mitchell Memorial Museum. I think Paul Milosevic is really the only founding member of the museum, I guess, that's still alive. Most everybody has passed on now, but there are still a lot of people around town, like Ruth Henritzy's daughter, Cosette. She still has plenty of stories about Mitchell. Every now and then I'll get stuck on something and I'll call Cosette. She was the editor at the newspaper for about 30 years. So I knew her from there, and I'll call her and say, did Mitchell ever, or do you remember this about Mitchell or the museum, or was there ever this painting here? And she can help me out. And there's all of the past directors of the museum are all still alive, but one, and that's Paul Cordova. He was the first director for about 10 years, and he was instrumental in getting a lot of funding and getting Mitchell and the Mitchell Museum on the map. He was a wonderful director, but there's all the rest of the directors are still alive. So I have lots of good references of people that I can go back to and ask questions. We've had the same company has done our taxes for probably the last 30 years, and they're located 2 doors down. So if I'm stumped on a financial question, I just pop over and ask Mike Dixon, hey, did somebody leave us a house 30 years ago? And where did that money get put? So there's lots of references that I have around here, but the museum was started by Mitchell's friends. And also, I believe Tot was kind of overwhelmed with what to do with, let's say 250, 260 original paintings. Let's just take a guess and say 5,000 sketches, 5,000 photographs, reference material, books. We have a whole library of books that belong to Mitchell, all of his little sketch pads, his notebooks, his collection of pottery and rugs. And it was a lot for one person to deal with. And that person that also had no family to leave it to, they had to do something with it. So we have the museum. I always thought when I was on the board that Mitchell would be rolling in his grave if he knew there was a whole museum dedicated just to him. I thought, what would he think about this? He'd probably hate it. But the more I find and the more I dive into the collection in the basement, he took copious notes. He, like I said, he wrote on everything. He did that for whoever ended up with his collection to know this is where this came from, or this sketch was traced from a Charlie Russell sketch. This is not my work. This is Charlie Russell's. I was trying to get the headdress right, or the shape of this yucca plant, or, and if he didn't care, if he thought everything was going to be thrown away, he wouldn't have written all that down. But he knows he's not rolling in his grave. I think he's pretty happy that his legacy is alive and that people are seeing it. And he may not have ever wanted to self-promote, but I don't think he's upset that we're promoting him now. And just the beginning of May, we had the Trinidad Youth Art Show in the museum. We took down all of the Mitchell artwork on the first floor and gave it to kindergarten through Trinidad State College for a big youth art show. And I think Mitch would be totally happy that we were supporting young artists. And if giving them a space on the wall in this museum makes them feel like they've accomplished something and they keep drawing or keep painting or keep sculpting, then I think we're doing exactly what he would have wanted. Of course, I'm saying that not ever actually having a conversation with the man, but he left us a lot to get to know him with. So I'm pretty confident that we're doing exactly what we should be doing.
So there's no heirs. His sisters didn't have children either?
Nope. Harriet never married and she didn't have children. There's no other Mitchell heirs.
Wow. And then Tot married, but then she became a widow.
She had a good long marriage, but her husband died quite a while before she did, but they never had children.
That's crazy.
So unless there's some illegitimate Mitchell heir running around there somewhere from his
New Jersey
illustrious past. Yeah, somewhere in New Jersey or Seattle. Who knows? But they've never, not that we know about, they've never come forward. So, of course, with 23andMe and all that, who knows what what can come up. But we have everything. I mean, I've got hundreds of paintbrushes. I've got tobacco packets. I've got his wallet with his driver's license and insurance card. And he really kept everything.
So do you sell any originals, or do you sell any of his personal items?
So we, in 2019, in order to market Mitchell, we let 11 Mitchell paintings go at an Art of the American West auction through Heinemann Auctioneers in Denver. And it was a giant success. It was actually on my birthday, and I was in the room, and, you kind of get that feeling of, it's my party. Nobody's going to come. I thought nobody's going to bid on it. They don't know who he is. We're just going to sit here and crickets are going to be chirping. And myself and a board member, Christine Loudon, who is the granddaughter of Richard Loudon, who wrote the Mitchellism book. She was on the board. She's not on the board anymore, but she's still very active with the museum. And the then board president, Laura Tucker, were all sitting in the room. And I think it started at lot number like 53 or something like that. And Maren Heinemann is up at the podium, and she says, now we have lot number whatever, A.R. Mitchell. Do I have any bids? And paddles went up, and all the people on the phones were raising their hand, and I just start bawling like a ridiculous baby. I'm just sitting here sobbing because people recognized it and were excited, and all the lots sold. They all sold. I think maybe one didn't sell above the estimate, but they all sold at least estimate or above. And we started getting invited to forums, and things were written about us in, Western Art and Architecture and True West magazine, and being recognized as a museum to follow. And then COVID hit, and all of that momentum just kind of came to a screeching halt. And now Heinemann, of course, wants us to do it again, but we don't really want to let go of any more. That was the first time in 40 years that we let go of anything. And we let 11 of them go. And Heinemann was very gracious and gave us great terms and put one of the Mitchells on the cover of their catalog. I mean, they marketed it just beautifully. And it was, we know it may be necessary to let go of, one or two more eventually, but it won't ever be 11, or maybe some sketches and not original paintings. But I get at least one or two calls a week wanting to know if we'll sell a Mitchell, because I think the people that have them now know I'm not getting rid of this. They're not on the market. They're not. Twice since then, I've seen two of them come up at auction, and they were both not ever in our collection. They were pieces that we hadn't seen before, that were just kind of out there, because there are some out there. And the last one, there was one this year, I believe it was February, that sold at an auction in Pennsylvania, and it went for 256% above the estimate. And of course, I'm over the moon to know that, one, there's a market for them, and one, that people are willing to pay that much for it. But for the museum, it's not about what's the monetary value of a painting worth. For us, we're not looking at it that way. But if we can use a painting to raise awareness for Mitchell, of course, we're not going to say we don't need the money, because of course we do need the money. But it's not about how much these paintings are worth. It's getting Mitchell's name out there and getting him recognition, and getting people introduced to him so they can see his work. We're not interested in selling it to make money for the museum. We're interested in people seeing it and wanting to support the museum and what we're doing here and what we're trying to do here. So the answer to that is yes, we have let some pieces go, but we reproduce just this year, we did about 13 or 14 different giclée prints that we've sold. And they've been really, really good sellers. But that's really the only way to get a Mitchell is if you're buying a reproduction. And we're the only people licensed to reproduce Mitchells. And the ones that we did this year, Cody Kuehl has started digitizing our collection. It is digitized, but it was done, 25 years ago. And technology has really advanced since then in making these digital images and reproducing them. So the ones that we have now hanging in the gift shop that are for sale are very, very close to the originals. You can put it right next to the original that's hanging on the wall, and the colors are spot on. And they're a really, really good recreation of the originals that we have here in the museum.
So do you print your own giclées, or do you have a printer?
We have a printer. We use a local printer for a lot of them, Dave Frank at Frank Images, but we've also started using a company in Denver called Duraplaque that does a really good job. When we have a really big order, we go with Duraplaque because Dave's a small operation here in Trinidad and does all of it himself, from printing, cutting, framing, all of that. And Duraplaque just has a little bit quicker turnaround time, I think. But when somebody orders a print online, we have www.armitchellmuseum.com. We have a little online store of giclée prints that you can choose from. And when it's, one or two at a time, those all go to our local printer, Dave Frank.
Yeah, I see you have 28 different giclées online that you can purchase. Now, do you change those out every year? Do you select different ones?
Not the ones online. The ones here in the gift shop, we change them out, but the ones online are just ones that you can always get. They're always available. The ones here in the gift shop, we only printed 2 of each of them, only 1 of some of them. So they're a limited quantity. But we can order more. We can get more of them. We just didn't this first year because we just didn't know how well they would sell. And we printed those in March, and our busy season is just now starting, and we've already sold half of them. So I would imagine that we're going to be ordering more of those.
So online they go for $225 to $275. What do they sell for in the gift shop?
About the same. It's priced by the size. It's dependent on the size of the print. So
are the prints are they the same size as the original, or are they?
No, they're a little bit smaller. Some are very close to the original size, but you can get it the original size if you're standing in the museum and you see one that you love and you want it that size. We can do that, but they're just kind of a more workable size, more kind of a standard size.
Yeah, very affordable.
I think so. We try to make it affordable. I don't think it would do us any good if we stuck $1,000 price tag and made it to where nobody could take it home. We want them to take it home. We want them to hang it up and let their friends come over and look at it and say, wow, where'd you get that? Who is that artist?
Right.
And when we did that auction, I gave Heinemann Auctions a stack of the Mitchellism book with my business card in it and said, give this to, because we're never going to know who bought the paintings unless they tell us. The auction house doesn't release that information. And I think at least half of the people that bought a Mitchell have reached out and come in to see the museum and wanted to see the rest of it. And they get the big tour, they get the basement, the 3rd floor, all of that good stuff.
So when people come visit, I want you to talk about what they're going to experience in the collections that you have, because it's just not Mitchell's work that they're going to see there.
Right. Right now, if you walk in the front door, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be the one that's greeting you here at the front desk. When you walk in to the right, we have a new Mitchell process show, which shows maybe the reference photo, the sketch, the magazine cover, and the original artwork all together. So you see his process of, hey, I was out at a branding and I took a picture and this cowboy's on a bucking horse. to the sketch of a cowboy on a bucking horse, to the original, what ended up on the magazine cover, and then the actual magazine cover hanging next to that. Then we have like a little cowboy series, then some landscapes, then some more adobies. Then further down the wall, we have the figure drawing exhibit. Then you go around the corner and you'll see a version of Mitchell's studio. And in that studio is a painting by his buddy Grant Renard of him actually in his studio. So you can look at this painting and say, oh, well, there's his easel, there's his plein air painting box, there's his stool. All the paintings that are in the studio back there are original Mitchell's, some in different phases of completion, photographs of him with different people, some Western movie stars, but everything in that studio belonged to Mitchell. The paintbrushes, the chair, the rug, the table, the bottle of mineral spirits, and varnish. It all was Mitchell's. It's not something created to look like what he would have used. It's all his actual things. Then you keep walking and you see a little exhibit of Mitchell's clothing. So you can see how tall he was, the cowboy hat that he wore, and it's all Levi's too, the button-down shirt, the bolo tie. His wallet is sitting on a table in there, a trunk that would have probably been at the end of his bed. Then you keep walking and you see an exhibit of tack, some saddles, some chaps that were all of it belonged to Mitchell. Then we have a wonderful Edward Curtis photography exhibit right now, all reproduced by Paul Unks. Paul lives in Denver and has basically been obsessed with Edward Curtis since 1971. And he got access to Denver University's complete collection of the North American Indian by Edward Curtis. And it's original photographs from that 30 years of work to create this series of the Native American Indian, the North American Indian. And Paul has exclusive rights to reprint them from those originals that DU owns, as long as he uses the same process that Edward Curtis uses. When we were hanging that exhibit, I thought they were gorgeous. I thought they were beautiful. And then I heard Paul's talk about the process, and I was just so impressed. It took him 7 years to learn how to reproduce a photo in the same method that Curtis would. And so every first Friday, we have a different featured artist in the Kuehl Fine Art Gallery. And that artist on the Thursday before First Friday does a talk at Trinidad State College. This time, Paul did the talk for June. He's coming back for the July First Friday, and he'll give a talk on Curtis, not his process, but the man. It's one of the most beautiful exhibits we've ever had here in the museum, and we are so lucky to have it. And then you come to the Kuehl Fine Art Gallery. It's all contemporary art, some Western, some not. Cody has 20 to 30 different artists from all over the United States, not just Colorado, that are kind of members of his gallery, and that the gallery changes every month. The next, July's First Friday, the featured artist for July is Michael Vacchiano, and then August is Cody Kuehl, September is Trish Stevenson, October is Jonathan McAfee. He's a Denver artist. November's going to be a good one. That's Sarah Boston, TJ Pittman, and Abby Pittman. Sarah is from Montana. TJ and Abby both live in Utah. But all of this, you can find all that information on our website. But First Fridays are a lot of fun here in Trinidad. All the galleries, we've got about 7 galleries now, all stay open later. We have food and music. There's live music up and down Main Street and Commercial Street on First Fridays too, and it's all free. It's a really good time to come down and check out kind of the art scene in Trinidad. And then upstairs on our mezzanine level, our second floor, which is ADA accessible. We have an elevator that goes to the second floor. We have our sacred art exhibit, which is Mitchell's sister Tot's collection of Hispanic and Spanish colonial religious artifacts. I will say some of it's a little creepy. There's a death doll up there that will scare the pants off of you, and her job is to scare away evil spirits. That is her literal job. So she's scarier than the evil spirits. She's upstairs. She's got actual real baby teeth in her mouth. But that's a lot of penitente memorabilia, or not memorabilia, artifacts, noisemakers, whips, the clothing that they wore. There's a little chapel up there. And then currently we have the Fox West Theater, which is a theater that was built by one of the Rapp brothers and it's based on Carnegie Hall. It has its balconies. It's just gorgeous, but it's undergoing a renovation right now. And we have an exhibit on the second floor to help raise awareness and raise money for the Fox West Theater. There's about 30 or 40 different movie posters from 1960 to 1962 that are for sale in an effort to raise money for the Fox West renovation. There's lots of old movie memorabilia up there, and there's old projectors and lighting and speakers and signs and the good old melted butter machine from the concessions and just all kind of good stuff up there. But that's what you'll see in the museum right now. In July, the Kuehl Fine Art Gallery will change. The Edward Curtis show is up and through August. So there'll be something new there in September. The Fox West show is up until the end of July. And then we'll have another show upstairs. We're constantly trying to change it to keep it fresh so you can come back multiple times and never see the same thing. We've got so much to choose from in our archives that it would be lazy of us to just leave the same thing up all the time.
Amazing.
There's so much to see and so many different ways to exhibit what we've got.
So I got to ask, when are you going to have Harvey Dunn stuff up? Because I would definitely come down for that.
Well, we had the last Harvey Dunn exhibit we had, it was kind of a student teacher exhibit. There were 4 Harvey Dunns, there were 3 Mitchells, and there was also Harold von Schmidt. So you could see how similar but different they were, how you could see the influence of the teacher on the students. And that just came down in May. That came down in May for the youth art show. And then we hung the Edward Curtis show right after that. So we do have 2, maybe 3 Dunns hanging up right now that are just, they're not part of an exhibit. They're just up because we always want to have some Dunns out because he was such an influence on Mitchell. One of my favorites is a Dunn, and it has a little caricature of Dunn on the bottom, and it says "To Mitch from Harvey." And I love that one because it's just so personal. It's not because it's the best Dunn I've ever seen. I just love it because it's so personal. But if you ever come in, I'm just going to take you downstairs and show you all the Dunns that we have. So they may not be exhibited, but they're always here in the museum.
Well, I'm going to take you up on that because I'm super interested. And my God, this museum sounds amazing. And I'm a little jealous of Todd that he was able to go. But
you're always welcome. So here's a funny thing about Dunn. I gave a little talk to the South Dakota Museum Guild. Of course, I said, y'all are welcome to come anytime. Well, I'm just in the museum one day, and this couple come in, and they were on the Zoom call from that little thing that I did. And I was taking them around, and then they turn around and go, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing here?" There was another person in the museum at the same time, all from South Dakota, all had been on that little thing that I did, that little talk that I did. They didn't coordinate. They didn't know each other were going to be there. And I had 3 people from South Dakota who knew each other very well in the museum at the same time that all came to see the Dunns that I had talked about. I just thought that's the magic of this building is magical. And I know that sounds hokey, and it's magical, and it's also haunted, but I can need something. I can look for something. Like someone will say, oh, we need to find the negatives from the Mitch book. They're in the basement somewhere. If you say it out loud in this building, you will find it, and you will find it quickly. Our basement is 12,000 square feet. There's a lot of stuff in there, and there's not somebody sitting in there that I go to their desk and say, hey, can you grab the negatives for me? And they type in the computer and know where to find it. You just got to go down there and look. And it's creepy. So I never want to be down there very long by myself. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put my big girl pants on, and I'm going to go look for those negatives. And I went downstairs, and literally the first box that I put my hands on said, Mitch book by Dean Kuehl, negatives inside. But that's the kind of thing that I was not surprised. They were surprised. They were shocked that they ran into each other in this museum in this little town. But I was like, oh, yeah, of course you did. Because that kind of thing happens in this building. I had a curator, Brandon Rickett, at one time, and he was working on a little pocket exhibit about Tott's house and the people that visited. She made the coolest guest book that, all these famous artists, great time had by all, and a little sketch, just the best thing. And he had this envelope of photographs out on a table. I don't know what I was doing or why he was in the main museum and not downstairs looking at it. Probably because it's creepy in the basement. But he had them all on this table, and this couple walked by, and they stopped, and said, oh my gosh, look at this. This is what we came to look for. And of course, I walk over there, and I said, what did you come to look for? They said, we came to find my grandparents' house. This is it. That guy's grandparents had bought Todd and Malcolm's house from them. So he's got a picture on his phone of his parents standing in front of the doorway of Tott's house. And they just happened to walk into the museum. Brandon just happened to have 20 photographs of Tott's house out on this table in the middle of the museum. And they just happened to be walking by. I was like, of course, that happened today in this museum. That kind of thing happens all the time. Now, I have never been able to say we need $100,000 to redo the bathrooms, and I go downstairs and find it. It doesn't work that way. I wish it did. But things, a gentleman from California came in looking for a jug, like a whiskey jug, a clay jug that said Tabasco on it. I've been in every nook and cranny in this museum, and I've never seen a Tabasco jug, but he said it's in the basement. It's not part of your collection. It was donated by this guy's family. And this guy in California had been looking for it, had been tracing it back. And Tabasco was an old mining community not far from here. And I asked Brandon, I said, have you seen this Tabasco jug? And Brandon goes, no, but you know what to do. So we both said, okay, we're looking for the Tabasco jug. And this gentleman had a cane that would pop out to a little triangle, and he could sit on it. He couldn't walk for very far before he'd have to take a little rest on his little triangle thing. And he's making his way around the museum, and he gets back to Mitchell's studio, and he thought we were nuts for saying it out loud. He'd been in the museum maybe 15 minutes. And he goes, ma'am? And I said, yes. And he said, can you come back here? And I walked back to Mitchell's studio, and he takes his cane and he points, and there's that dang Tabasco jug sitting in the studio, which I had just dusted the studio the week before. And I mean, I touched everything that was in there. I didn't see that Tabasco jug, but there it was. And all we had to do was say out loud, all right, we're looking for the Tabasco jug. And Cody can attest to this because he's looked for sketches. He said, wait a minute, do we have this? And I was like, say it out loud and go downstairs and look for it. And it just sounds so kooky, but it happens. It happens. If it happened once, I wouldn't even be talking about it. But I'm not kidding. At least 10 times it's happened in this wonderful, weird building that has different energies on different levels. It's just when you come in, you'll say, she wasn't making it up.
Tell me one of your favorite ghost stories.
Okay, so we had this board member named Paloma Nishinko, and she was, and I say was, she passed away a year ago, and she was an oceanographer. She was a cartographer. She also made jewelry. She was in here one day, and a kid comes in to interview us for his parents' newspaper, and he had just graduated from college. And she said, well, what's your degree? And he said, fine art and German. And she just starts speaking German. I didn't even know she spoke German. She started speaking German. The kid leaves, and I said, I didn't know you could speak German. She goes, well, I haven't in about 30 years. Oh, but you just remembered it and started speaking fluent German. But she was kooky. I mean, when she would pitch a fit about something, and I would call her Paloma Donna, and she loved the nickname. But she was high maintenance and an artist and very dedicated to the museum, and showed up anytime I ever needed somebody. So she and I were in the basement one day, because she showed up because I didn't want to go in the basement by myself. So she came downstairs with me, and there's no air conditioning in this building. There's no drafts or anything like that. It's just, we have ceiling fans in the museum, and that's how we create, how we move the air around. But in the basement, there's none of that. I wear dresses pretty much every day. It's unusual if I'm not wearing a dress. And we're walking in the basement, and it's dark, and I'm telling her how creepy it is, and I need to change some light bulbs. And I turn on the light bulb, and my dress just flies up. Just flies. I mean, there's no breeze. There's nothing. And she calls our resident ghost George. And she's like, George, quit being such a pervert. She just says it. And she goes, do you smell that? And I said, smell what? She said, it's tobacco smoke. Do you smell the tobacco smoke? And I'm not kidding. It was like my dad was sitting smoking a pipe right next to us. Nobody's there. There's no reason for my dress to fly up. There's no reason to smell tobacco. And of course, Paloma is just completely unfazed, just like, happens. And I'm like, can we get out of this basement, please? But no, she's like, no, let's get what we came down here for. And, I've got my little flashlight on my phone as if that's going to scare something away. But I'm not the only one. There's lots of people that have stories about the museum. We have a third floor, and it's usually empty, but we have some studio space up there, and every now and then somebody will come in to use their studio, and I'll text them and say, is that you up there? Or do I just hear footsteps for no reason? And they do the same thing. Are you in the museum, or did you just press the elevator button? Because I'm hearing a dinging noise. Everybody gets a little creeped out up on the third floor. There's a pottery studio up there, and we have a potter in town named Laura Nava, and she recorded, not video, sound of a ghost when she was up there using the kilns. And she said she's heard one of the pianos on the third floor that's just in a storage room playing itself. She calls that ghost Dottie. She says Dottie plays the piano on the third floor. I have not heard Dottie play the piano, because I honestly don't know that I could stay in here by myself if I did. I may have to find other employment if Dottie starts playing the piano. But there's all kind of stories that different people and different directors have told me about ghosts and weird things in the museum. There's been a couple directors that have lived in the museum. Now, that's a hard no for me. But I just say good morning when I come in, and I say see you later when I leave, and that's about it. So we kind of don't mess with each other.
Well, thanks for sharing, because I love a good ghost story. I do.
We've had several people call wanting to do ghostly things in the museum, and I just that's a no. I don't stir anything up. I can take it like it is, but if you want to start calling people out and stirring stuff up, I am just not.
So Todd and I can't do a seance podcast?
I know. I think that's a no. I think that's a no for me. I think that's a hard no. My daughter-in-law wants to or my stepdaughter wants to spend the night in the museum. I'm like, yeah, I can't let you do that by yourself. And I am not going to be with you. So no.
How old is she? How old is she?
She's 32.
Oh, she's 32. And you can't stay there by yourself.
She knows better.
She's an adult. I would let her stay there so I could hear a story.
But she was taking that pottery class with me when Laura was like, y'all, listen what just happened. And of course, Gina's all over it. She wants to hear all the gory stuff. And I am just not into scary things at all. She's like, it's not scary. It's just real. No.
That's awesome. Well, we'll leave it there. We don't want to freak you out. We'll change the subject. And
it's still light outside. I am here by myself, but it's still light outside, so I'm good.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the stories. Like I said, I love a good ghost story. So
there's lots of them.
God, it makes me. I can't wait to come.
Time for a road trip.
You know, Wes, when I was there visiting in May, I thought about you the entire time. I'm like, this is so up Wes's alley. Like he would love being here and love to experience this. So yeah, when you come down the next time, we need to make a trek to Trinidad together and experience that. I'm chomping at the bit to get back down there myself. So
well, I'll it won't happen the next couple months, but maybe before the end of the year, before the snow flies, maybe September, October.
We've got a lot going on in September and October in Trinidad. Okay. So either one of those months would be a good time to come down.
So I will definitely try to make that happen. So I got a lot of balls in the air for as far as to juggle around, but maybe we can make a long weekend and make that happen. So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say it's a beautiful building. I mean, that in itself would be enough of a draw to go in there. And then you have all of Mitchell's beautiful art and then all the other collections and everything that Cody Kuehl is doing with his gallery inside the museum. And then, you know, whatever artist he's featuring that month there. But you look at the floors are all original. And you look at the scuff marks on them and the wear, and you just think about how many people have passed through there and who has passed through there. And it gives me chills just thinking about it. I mean,
if I'm going to be totally honest, the building is what got me I didn't even see art on the wall the first time I came into this building. It was for a fundraiser for our local animal shelter, Noah's Ark. It's called the Fur Ball now. But I came in for that fundraiser. The newspaper was a sponsor of the event, and I was new to town, and I needed to go to things and meet people. And I walked in, and I think it was I forgot the theme, but you know, there were 300 people and a band, and I just walked in and looked at these tin ceilings and these big iron cast columns and the floor, and I could not believe what I was seeing. I was just so taken with the building. And then about a month later, I got an invitation to join the board, and I came in for the initial board meeting, and there was no fundraiser going on. It was closed for the year. They used to close October to May every year. Now we're open year round. But I walked in and went, oh, wait a minute. There's art here too. I mean, I knew it was a museum, but I didn't remember seeing any art because there were so many people. And I was then just as taken by the beautiful artwork that was on the walls, but the building is what initially got its hooks in me. And part of our budget, about a quarter of our budget, is renting the building out for other people's fundraisers. We have our own big fundraiser in here every year. We have a big Tamborelli family reunion in here in July. We've got a Rotary dinner in here also at the beginning of July, but we rent it out for a lot of events. And that really is a big chunk of our budget, is the money that we get for hosting events in here, because you don't have to decorate. It's already gorgeous. If you want to put a vase of flowers on the table, that's on you, but you don't have to do anything for decor when you have an event here in the museum.
Recently, the Mitchell Museum had a little bit of a close call. Talk about that.
Yeah. So this building takes up a whole city block. And because of the elevation of Maple Street next to us, our third floor is street level to First Street behind us. The building that's kind of our next door neighbor and kind of connected to us up on First Street had a big fire. It was arson, and it caused about $3.5 million in damages to the museum. So far, we've cleaned all the artwork. We've cleaned the building. The ceilings had to be scrubbed, the floors, the walls, everything had to be taken down and cleaned. So like I said, it's 46,000 square feet. All of that had to be scrubbed. We still have quite a ways to go. We still have to rebuild the wall that fell in. It's in a really weird area. It's not a place that anybody would see. It doesn't affect the day-to-day operation of the museum, but there's about 2 feet of mud, now dirt, in the basement of the museum. And the only way to get it out, the only access, is through the front door. So the insurance company has calculated how many people, how many 5-gallon buckets, how many trips it's going to take to get all that dirt out of the area where the damage occurred, one bucket at a time, out the front door into a dumpster on Main Street. That's not being done right now because it's our busy season. And the last thing we want to have to do is close down for a couple weeks for dirt removal and have one, parking taken away on Main Street, but also a big dumpster full of dirt in front of the museum. So we're trying to calculate when the best time is to get that done. I don't think they really liked my idea of just doing it on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I mean, a Sunday, Monday when we're closed, and then take the dumpster away and let it be fine for us to open. But we'll see. We're still working on all of that. Thankfully, we had good insurance. It's only going to cost us the deductible, which is $2,500, which doesn't sound like much when it's a over $3 million claim. But when it's not budgeted for and it's not part of our contingency plan for the year, it takes a chunk out of your budget. So we have that $2,500 cleanup fee and a $8,000 elevator repair. That's, over $10,000 in unexpected expenses can feel like a big hit to the tight budget that we run off of here in the museum. But we'll have our annual fundraiser on October 21st. We haven't quite decided who the entertainment is going to be for the night, but that's our one big annual fundraiser for the year. We have a silent auction. Our resident show will also be hanging in October. That's where we have 40 different artists from all over the country that choose a photo from our Mitchell archives, a photo that Mitchell took or that Mitchell collected, and they create their interpretation of that photo. It is my favorite thing that we do all year. And that was kind of a collaboration of, I was talking to Cody. We were talking about the photos. We're archiving them. Cody and his mother are actually doing the archives. And I said, man, I really wish we could have a show with a ton of artists. I said, but I don't know that many artists. And Cody goes, I do. And he sent out a call for artists to 45 different artists, and they all responded and they showed up, and it was just fantastic. And that's going to be an annual show now. That'll be the first Friday in October is the resident show opening. And the artists are just now getting ready to be contacted, and they'll start choosing their photos for that show. That it is, for me, I think what means so much to me about that is that a photo that Mitchell took, let's say in 1925, is now relevant today and a contemporary piece of art today. And I'm sure when he was taking all those photos, he never thought hey, some museum is going to have a whole show based on my photography. He may have thought there'll be a show of my artwork in a museum one day, but I'm sure he didn't think twice about all those photos that he kept, that he just snapped. I mean, there's thousands of them. And we have the cool photo envelopes that they came in with the negatives where he sent the film off to have it developed and it was mailed back to him. So I love that it's kind of a way of keeping Mitchell alive, not just the museum, but making him relevant today, making something he did 100 years ago relevant today. And it could be, I mean, we had sculptors, we had a local artist paint a scene on a church bench. We give them they can go buck wild. They can do whatever they want. There's no limitations on how they interpret that photograph that they choose. And it really is stunning. It takes up the whole mezzanine, and it's just really something to see. But that will be the first Friday in October is when that opening is for the resident show.
So that'd be October 6th.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Talk about what days and hours you're open, Allyson.
We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 4. And if that time frame doesn't fit for you, you just give me a call and we'll work something out. The admission is free. We used to charge $5 admission, but when I took the job, the first thing I did was take away that admission fee because I really felt like I don't want $5 to keep somebody from seeing the museum. And when we stopped charging admission, we have a big donation jar right on the front desk. Our donations quadrupled and sales skyrocketed in our gift shop. So we haven't missed that $5 entrance fee at all.
That was smart. I love that.
Yeah.
Every now and then I have a good idea. I just wanted everybody that wanted to see it to be able to see it. And it just was dumb luck that it ended up being profitable not to charge admission.
Yeah.
So what's the vision moving forward in the very near future for the Mitchell Museum? And is there long-term vision or goals for the museum?
There are. We have a strategic plan that, I mean, it could take us the next 50 years to accomplish everything on that strategic plan. But we have a third floor that's not really being utilized right now. So activating that space is in the forefront of our minds. We're about to sign a lease for the pottery studio, for someone to take over the pottery studio. That's in August. We have a lease that's just about to be signed for 2 of the studios upstairs, which we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 9 studios up there altogether. So that'll be 2 of them leased and the pottery studio. There's a big 3,000 square foot gallery up there on the 3rd floor. And we just had the Denver Student Art League come down to Trinidad. 11 artists come down to Trinidad to have a class here in the museum. We really want to activate that 3rd floor space. And Cody's gallery moving into the museum, inside the museum, that has created more visibility for the museum. A lot of people coming in because they see Cody's gallery from the street. We took down a wall and now you can actually look in the windows and see into the museum. And before it was just like an old storefront. You saw you could have a display in the storefront, but you couldn't see into the museum. And now you can. First Fridays, we've been doing them for a year now. May was the 1-year anniversary of the First Fridays. We do them year round. We skip January just because everybody's tired from the holidays. So we skip January, but we do it 11 months out of the year. And that has brought in so many new faces, and they're busier and more people are coming in every First Friday, month to month. We're getting more people in. We have just started this year a new quarterly exhibits in the museum. Used to the first floor, it'd be the same exhibit for 3 or 4 years, but now we're changing it quarterly. And we've really activated the mezzanine level where we have different exhibits on the mezzanine level every quarter also. So really it's getting more people in and using all the space that we have. that resident show. We're about to kick off our second year of that. Or I guess now we can call it annual since it's the second time that we've done it. But just really being more active and getting out of Trinidad. We want more people to see Mitchell. We went to the Out West Art Show in Montana this year and had a booth of Mitchell. And I can't tell you how many people came in and wanted to know how I had reproduced Charlie Russell paintings and why I was selling them as A.R. Mitchell. I'm like, no, they were just very close to being the same person. They were both cowboys. They were both artists. Charlie Russell's wife marketed him, or he would have never been as famous as he was. But he and Mitchell lived such a similar life, and they painted what they saw. They were both cowboys, so their paintings are similar. And Mitchell studied Russell. He thought Russell was just fantastic. So getting Mitchell out of Trinidad so more people can see him and more people can learn about him. Just before we started this podcast, a couple that I met at that show in Montana, they're on a road trip and they came in. They actually live in Denver, but they came in today because they saw it in Montana. So really, we need a bathroom renovation. I wasn't kidding about that earlier. It's $100,000 to renovate our bathrooms, which we desperately need because we're hosting so many more events in here. There's a toilet and a urinal in the men's bathroom and 2 toilets in the women's bathroom. It's not adequate when you have a wedding with 400 guests and that's all you have to offer. We have the blueprints. They've already been through pre-permitting with the city. We just need the money to actually get it done. But that's not a sexy project. That's not something that, Budweiser wants their name on our bathrooms as a remodel. It's not the easiest fundraiser to get going. There's always a constant struggle of raising money, looking for grants. We just got awarded a collections assessment grant, but that collections assessment grant is a 1-to-1 match. So now we have to come up with the money to match the money that we're given. And we need that collections assessment to know what we need to ask for in the future. We need to know how many of our paintings need to be restored, how many just need new varnish, or, there's all that stuff that is not in my wheelhouse that we need an expert to come in and say, this is what you need. This is what you should be asking for. And this is what you can ask for because you have a third party expert saying, this is what you need.
Well, how much is that grant?
That grant is $4,000 for each expert, and there's a collections expert and a building expert. So they give us $4,000. We have to come up with, they give us $8,000. We have to come up with another $8,000, or in-kind donations, like volunteer hours can count towards that $8,000. I can probably get La Quinta is one of our best supporters. If we have a visiting artist or a band for our ball, I can call Cy Michaels at La Quinta and they'll give us some free rooms. So maybe we can get part of their travel taken care of. And so there are ways around just coming up with the cash. And we're not desperate. We have operating expenses, but it's just one more thing to come up with, but it's needed. This museum operates on a handful of volunteers, a wonderful working board, and myself. I'm the only paid employee here. So it has a great title of executive director, but I'm also the toilet fixer or the snow shoveler or when needed, the bathroom cleaner, but I'm also the fundraiser and the cook for the food for our First Fridays. There's just everybody pitches in and does what needs to be done here. And that's what I love about this organization, because there's not a single board member that I couldn't call and say, hey, I need help with this. Or, our vice president volunteers every Tuesday from 2 to 4. And when I say volunteers, we had a leak in one of the bathrooms and he ran the snake and then cleaned up the mess afterwards. Nobody feels like they're too good to do anything here. Everybody's attitude is what's best for the museum, what's going to get this museum moving forward. And a big part of the resident show, 40 different artists, is that's 40 different social media, not platforms. They're all using Instagram and Facebook, but that's 40 different people posting about an event. If this one has 5,000 followers, this one has 10,000 followers, it all creates marketing for the museum. So part of it was just getting more people into the museum and getting Mitchell's work out there, that photography out there. But the other side of that is marketing the museum. And so many people last year saw other people's Instagram posts and called the museum or came in, and that old saying, it takes a village. It does take a village. And it really feels like that ball is rolling now, and we're building momentum like we were building in 2019. Yep, I started in 2018. The auction was in 2019. It eventually comes to me. But we're feeling that same momentum that we had before COVID in 2019. That was building after the auction. And we can feel that again. You can feel the energy in Trinidad, but I can really feel it every time I walk in this building and come to work.
So if somebody wanted to donate money or leave an endowment to you, how would they get a hold of you? armitchellmuseum@gmail.com is our email address, but you can also reach out through the website. You can do small donations on the website of, I think, up to $100. We have several people that have, it's just like you put it in the cart. You put the donation in the cart and then you check out. You can put 10 $100 donations in the cart. But we are a Colorado enterprise zone. So if you're a Colorado resident and you pay Colorado state taxes, you can get 25% back, 25% of your donation back in a tax credit on your state taxes, because we are an enterprise zone. You can get that tax credit. You can call. We are set up to accept endowments. We have that set up. That we have 3 different endowments already that we have in our system. So we know how to deal with that. We are looking for patrons and sponsors. You can sponsor different events like our annual ball. You can buy a table. You can buy something from the auction. You can donate something to the auction. You can be the banner sponsor for the event. There's so many different ways. If you want to donate to the museum, we can find a way that suits you to make you feel good about your donation. To me, I feel good when I donate to the museum just because I want the museum to continue. Even though I work here, I still do an annual donation to the museum because it's not just a job to me. I do need the job, but this place is not just a job for me. But if you're donating because your company wants to be a sponsor, we can handle that. If you're donating because you just want to support the arts, we got you covered on that too. There's so many different ways you can help, even by volunteering an hour a week. If you want to help this museum, we've got a way to help you do that. Very good. And you a 501c3 or?
We have been since 1979.
Okay. That's good to know.
And for those that are listening, if you go to the museum website under the support tab, there is a whole page that's dedicated to patron and donor programs. So check that out if you feel like supporting the Mitchell Museum. Obviously, the Mitchell Museum in itself is a reason to stop in Trinidad, make Trinidad a destination. But I know that you are very connected into the whole community in Trinidad. Talk about some of the things, if they come down this summer, they're passing through, they want to make a weekend of it or a day trip, some of the things that are coming up in the community that might be interesting to check out in addition to what you already kind of laid out for us.
Sure. So we have the 2 state parks that I mentioned, Fisher's Peak State Park and Trinidad Lake State Park. Those are 2 great things to do while you're in Trinidad, whether it's just go to the lake and watch the sunset or go hiking up the Fisher's Peak State Park. You're going to see wildlife. Well, thankfully, the spiders have already done their migrate. There's a time of the year where the spiders are crossing the road, the tarantulas are crossing the road. That's past. You got to come earlier in the year for that. But September is crazy busy in Trinidad. It kicks off with the Caveman Music Festival, and that's Labor Day weekend, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That's 20 plus bands and musicians up at Monument Lake. Monument Lake is owned by the city of Trinidad. That's up Highway 12. You can find information at cavemanmusicfestival.com for that one. We have the Artocade, which is a big art car festival in Trinidad. That's on Main Street and Commercial. That's September 9th. You can find more information on artocade.com on that. But even outside of the Artocade Festival, so there's going to be over 100 art cars. And when I say art cars, you just have to Google it to see it. I don't even know how to explain the dragon with the 15-foot neck that breathes fire that rolls down Main Street. Or I remember one year there was a giant cockroach, and that giant cockroach got driven from Houston to Trinidad. So you'd be driving down the interstate next to a mini bus-sized cockroach. There's a car that looks like a telephone. There's a pig, a big blow-up pig. There's one made completely out of mirrors. There's one completely made out of cigarette butts. It's just, some of them make political statements. Some just make you laugh. There's one called Earth, Wind, and Fire. There's a van with eyeballs all over it. It's just so much fun. But outside of the festival, if you want to come to Trinidad at any other time of the year, we have the Art Car Museum. And so you can go see a lot of these art cars and, walk around them, look at them. Their permanent home is here in Trinidad. They've got a Facebook page. They've got a website. But the Art Car Museum, it's called Art Cartopia, is right here in Trinidad too. This year, we have the first Fisher's Peak State Park Trail Race. That's September 23rd. Then we have the Rad Dirt Fest, which Lifetime Fitness puts on this big gravel bicycle ride. You can do 40 miles, 70 miles, or 110 miles, and that's September 30th. The finish line and the starting line is right outside the museum. It is right here on Main Street. And it's so fun to see all these vendors and, 1,000 people lined up to start this race right here in the middle of Trinidad. And that's the raddirt.com is the website for that one. We have the Spaghetti Western Film Festival. That's kicks off October 13th. You can find information about that on Colexicoexperience.com. That's Colorado and New Mexico put together for Colexico experience.com. And October 13th, it kicks off with a spaghetti cook-off here in the museum where you can vote on your favorite spaghetti sauce. And then you can watch these great old spaghetti westerns in the theater here in Trinidad, or also it goes on in Raton, New Mexico too. We have our big fundraiser October 21st. We don't have tickets available for it yet, but they will be available on our website probably in the next month or so. And that's another good reason to come to town. But just coming to Trinidad, there's, like I said earlier, there's live music almost every night. There's good food. There's great scenery. And you can just walk around downtown. You can take a stroll out at the lake. There's lots to see. There's 7 different galleries. There's 2 museums. Actually, there's 3 museums. There's the Mitchell Museum, the Trinidad History Museum, the Art Car Museum, and a 4th one, the Coal Mining Museum, which is also here on Main Street. They're relatively new, and I don't know their hours yet. But there really is more to do than a lot of locals even realize. I hear locals complaining, there's nothing to do in this town. Well, come talk to me, because I've got at least 20 different ideas every weekend. And you can fish in the Purgatory River. You can park in the parking lot at Safeway and walk over the knoll to the river and fish right there. And we've got a beautiful trail, the River Walk, that's a flat trail if you're not a big hiker like myself, you can climb the Spanish Peaks, which are about 45 minutes from Trinidad. You can climb the East and the West Peak. One is easier than the other, but I'm not the person to ask on which one that is. But there's just, if you want to do it, you can, it seems like you can do it in Trinidad. If you want to hike, you can hike. If you want to go for a long bike ride, we've got, we even have little guidebooks on all the bike trails put together by a local Juan De La Roca. He was on our board here at the museum, and he does these trail guides. I think he's done 10 or 11 of them now for different areas all over the United States, but Trinidad was his first one. There's bird watching, there's fishing. You can't swim in the lake, but you can boat and you can kayak. You can rent kayaks down at the lake. You can paddleboard. You can jet ski. You do all of that right here in Trinidad. And thankfully, because we're in Colorado, we do have really good weather most of the time. We're under a thunderstorm watch right now. But hopefully, like y'all said earlier in the podcast, hopefully that rainy weather is starting to pass. But there's just so much to do. Or you can just go sit in Chimino Park and enjoy the beautiful weather.
Beautiful.
And I will say this, when we were down there in May, you told my wife about the Highway of Legends.
Uh-huh.
And we drove that back.
Good.
And it was absolutely stunning. And in the fall, that would be just spectacular.
It really is. And that Highway of Legends, I like to start in Trinidad because you're looking at the mountains the whole time. So you start in Trinidad. You can stop off at Monument Lake and go fishing if you want to. That's where the Caveman Festival is going to be. The Caveman Music Festival is up at Monument Lake. You can stop in Curator at the Yacht Club or the Dog Bar and have a drink and a meal, and stop in La Vida and buy some artwork and meet some really interesting people. They have a really cool grocery store in La Vida, or stay at the La Vida Inn or eat at Alice's, ALY''S. Her name is Alice Romer, and it's some of the best food you'll ever eat in Colorado. And then jump right back on the interstate and head back home to Denver, or head south to Albuquerque, whatever you want to do. But that Highway 12, that Highway of Legends, is just a beautiful drive, and there's lots to see. And if you learn a little bit about it before you get on it, you can imagine Al Capone running booze up Highway 12.
Allyson, thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you for your passion. I love what is going down there in Trinidad with all the different businesses, the museum, the art scene. It's just spectacular. And I appreciate you coming on and talking about A.R. Mitchell and the museum and the work that you guys do there. Keep it up. I'll definitely be back soon. I just love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This has been a wonderful conversation, and I learned a ton, and I just can't wait to come down there. I definitely want to experience the museum. I definitely want to see the Harvey Dunn artwork.
South Dakota's in the house down here. We've got South Dakota represented with Harvey Dunn. That's for sure.
I love that. And I can't wait to come down and see you. October sounds like a good time to come. So maybe it'll be in October.
I mean, there's a lot going on. That spaghetti western's fun, but our annual ball is always a lot of fun. You can dress, it's Trinidad, so there'll be sequins and there'll be Wranglers. Either way, you fit in here. So it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So once again, thank you so much for
thank you both for having me.
Again, if you happen to be vacationing in Colorado this summer or anytime in the future, or live in Colorado and want to experience something cool and unique, put Trinidad and the A.R. Mitchell Museum on your itinerary. You can check out the goings on via their website, armitchellmuseum.com. And don't forget to follow the A.R. Mitchell on Instagram at A.R. Mitchell Museum. The A.R. Mitchell Museum is located at 150 East Main Street in Trinidad, Colorado, 81082, and is open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. As always, I will have this and more in this week's episode notes. For the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.